When Hugo Chavez died in March 2013, Venezuela lost more than a president. It lost its anchor, its magnetism, the heart of a movement that had bound millions around a dream of justice, dignity, and a new world order. Chavez was charisma. Chavez was authority. Chavez was belief. And in his death, Venezuela lost its compass. What remained was a system built for loyalty, not competence. A political machine whose gears had never been oiled for resilience, nor calibrated for crisis. At its center stood Nicolás Maduro, a man without myth, without a commanding history, without unquestioned trust. He inherited an economy already trembling on the edge, utterly dependent on oil, utterly reliant on Chávez's aura, and utterly unprepared for chaos. With Chávez gone, the country didn't just lose a leader, it lost its story. Oil was everything in Venezuela, 95% of export earnings, nearly all public spending. Yet from the moment Maduro stepped up, the price foundation beneath the country began to crack. In 2014, global oil prices collapsed, sliding from over $100 per barrel to under $30 within 2 years. Overnight, Venezuela's revenue evaporated. Without diversification, without buffers, without industry beyond oil, the state's cash engine seized. Instead of reform, the government printed money. Lots of it. Bolívares poured into circulation until the currency collapsed. Prices doubled, then tripled, then became meaningless. This wasn't simply inflation. It was hyperinflation, a departure from the rules of economics into a new kind of chaos. As the currency tumbled, people's ability to buy food, medicine, shelter, or dignity collapsed with it. Markets became battlefields. Supermarket shelves became ghost towns. Hospitals began their slow descent into ruin. Historical context interlude, archive, audio quotes on Venezuelan inflation and currency collapse. Behind closed doors, economists warned of catastrophe. On the streets, Venezuelans realized it had already begun. This wasn't merely an economic crisis. It was a humanitarian catastrophe. By 2025, nearly 8 million Venezuelans, about 25% of its population, had fled the country, seeking food, safety, work, a future. The largest displacement crisis in Latin American history. People walked across borders with children on their shoulders, fathers carrying dreams heavier than their bags, mothers crying at checkpoints, doctors with stethoscopes slung over backpacks, engineers teaching math in buses, leaving home not because they wanted to, but because they had no other choice. Cities like Bogotá, Lima, Santiago, Quito, and countless others grew pockets of Venezuelan. Communities, people who once belonged to a nation now scattered across the hemispheres. This was not emigration. This was an exodus. Include real migrant audio clips, stories of crossing borders, waiting in line for visas, finding work in foreign lands to evoke emotional impact. As the economy imploded, society fractured. Schools shuttered, teachers fled, children lost years of education. Hospitals ran out of supplies. Once treatable diseases returned like ghosts. Clean water became a luxury. Nearly 70% of Venezuelans lacked regular access to safe drinking water. Illnesses like malaria and dengue resurged. Violence and insecurity soared, from robbery to kidnapping to gang warfare. Inside the country, a shadow society took shape, not organized by politics, but by survival. Barter markets, dollar pockets, informal work, and unregulated trade. Every day became a negotiation with existence. Supermarkets, once stocked with abundance, became symbols of memory, reminders of what was lost, not what was left. While ordinary people suffered, politics became theater and violence. Elections were disputed. The opposition fractured. The ruling party clung to power through a complex web of patronage, repression, and loyalty enforcement. Protests erupted, first sporadically, later en masse, but were met with force. Thousands were detained on vague charges. Many were tortured, beaten, or disappeared. By the late 2020s, Venezuela's political institutions, judiciary, legislature, election authorities were no longer independent. They became instruments of power. Corruption, already rampant, became systemic. a parasite woven into the very fabric of governance. Venezuela consistently ranked among the most corrupt states in the world. The military became kingmakers, the ultimate arbiters of survival for any leader. And yet the nation's will to live outlasted all of it. As Venezuela sank deeper, the international community reacted. The United States and others imposed sweeping sanctions, targeting access to finance, oil exports, investment, and more. These penalties restricted key revenue streams, squeezing a dying economy tighter. Critics argued these moves accelerated collapse rather than creating it outright. Supporters of Maduro blamed sanctions for the crisis. Critics blamed decades of mismanagement and corruption. The truth? Sanctions didn't create Venezuela's collapse. They accelerated a process already underway. But blame alone doesn't comfort those who starved. Council on Foreign Relations. Oil production, once near 3.5 million barrels per day, fell to under 1 million and sometimes below as infrastructure rusted and expertise drained. Pipelines leaked. Refineries rusted. Engineers left. The nation with the largest oil reserves in the world was producing less than many nations without any. Then came the unexpected. In early January 2026, a dramatic military operation led by the United States resulted in the capture of Nicolas Maduro in Caracas. The world watched as the leader, who had dominated Venezuelan politics for over a decade, was taken into custody on federal charges, accused of corruption, repression, and narco-trafficking. Rejoice and resistance erupted simultaneously. Venezuelans abroad celebrated. Venezuelans inside Caracas watched silently, bracing for what came next. The U.S. justified its action as a campaign against narco-terrorism and pledged control over Venezuela's vast oil resources, promising investment and reconstruction. Critics around the world condemned the operation as a legal intervention, a violation of sovereignty. Cuba and allies denounced it as state terrorism. In the midst of geopolitical debate, Venezuela remained in flux, its fate hanging between occupation, reconstruction, revolution, or chaos. With Maduro removed, a new chapter begins, but no path is guaranteed. Leaders in Caracas pledged peace and release of political prisoners as gestures of unity. But reconciliation will not be easy. Infrastructure is broken. Trust is shattered. Institutions lie in ruins. Yet hope flickers like embers in dry grass, fragile, persistent, unpredictable. The question now is not simply who governs Venezuela, but what kind of governance a fractured society can repair. Can oil, once the nation's burden, become a tool of recovery? Or will it repeat the same cycle of dependence, distortion, and collapse? The answer lies not beneath the ground, but in the people above it. Venezuela's tragedy teaches a brutal truth. Natural resources do not create prosperity, institutions do. Oil brought money but destroyed discipline. Oil brought power but weakened accountability. Oil brought wealth and then left the nation hollow. Prosperity requires more than reserves. It demands resilience, diversified economies, fairness, transparency, and above all, faith in citizens. Not just crude. The oil is still there, but the country remains lost. Through migration, suffering, division, and triumph, Venezuela is now a mosaic of displaced dreams. Some pieces may be picked up. Some may be replaced. Some may never return. What echoes through time is not merely loss, but the unfinished story of a nation's struggle to reclaim itself.